Now I request our chief guest, Dr.T. Ramasami, to address the convocations.
Namaskar, good morning. The spirit of universal learning, Goddess Saraswati and Venus, our most distinguished president of this university, provost, vice chancellor, members of the governing body and management, generous donors and investors into this great center of high learning, Shri Patel, and other distinguished Patels, and several household names on the dais, directors, distinguished guests, faculty, parents, members of the families of graduates, students, staff, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Let me offer my own greetings to the new graduates and all those wonderful award winners. And let me also congratulate the institution and parents. Convocation is a memorable occasion. In some sense, it's a day of culmination of effort and celebration. Let me also congratulate CHARUSAT University, which has undertaken a journey to emerge as one of the world-class universities from India. I wish this university all success. Let me wish this journey go even further in becoming the world-class university. Let it emerge as the modern version of the Nalanda and Taxila of the universal class of universities. Nalanda actually means the joy of giving. Let me congratulate this university for taking the development to people rather than let the people move towards the development. It's a great gesture. Let me once again wish this university and all of you the very best. Of course, today is a culmination of effort and of course celebration. This day earmarks also a new beginning to some of you. Every beginning raises the hope. Hope is an important human emotion. Let me wish all of you a new beginning laced with hope and splendor and rise in life to the levels that make you happy in the years to come. Let me wish all of you a happy life ahead on this special occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, rise represents a state of mental disposition in which flow of positive energy with the feeling of good days is felt. Human mind seeks such rises in life all the time. Similarly, nation states also have started to seek such rises in power equations of the world. Rise of India is not just a theme for Indians alone. It's a global expectation. There are predictions that by 2035, India might be a major economic power among the Committee of Nations. By 2035, India might emerge as world's largest populous country. It is one thing to rise in economic well-being and altogether another to evolve as a learned society. Whereas economic well-being defines one-dimensional shift, it is the learned and civilizational behavior of people that would make the rise in economic plane wholesome. For this, education holds the key. Therefore, I've chosen to engage in conversation with all of you today on the theme, Education for India and a Renaissance. Ladies and gentlemen, we're all descendants of an ancient civilization built together with a fine thread of tolerance and endurance. The ability to resolve human conflicts with sensitivity is truly a measure of civilizational elevation. Indian civilization was built through a synthesis of all rich cultures and philosophies of the world over 2,000 years. Columbus discovered America in search of India. India, that she was until the first quarter of the 19th century, was cynosure of the world. It was not only because of our economic well-being of people, but also on account of emotional wellness. India has gone through a trough in the intervening years, some of which could really be traced to strong economic realities in the society. We are rebuilding not only the country, but also the civilization which was at the apex of the cultural pyramid some time back in reshaping the future of India. Education holds the key. Gurudev Tagore, in his noble address, languished about the changes in educational processes in India and sought in some sense the renaissance of which I'll be talking about today. He said on the 26th of May 1921, I quote, "You know, the traditions of our country are never to accept any material fees from the students in return to teaching, because we consider in India that one who has knowledge has a responsibility to impart it to the students. We lost our confidence in our own civilization for over a century when we came into contact with the Western races with the material superiority over the Eastern humanity and Eastern culture, and in the educational establishments, no provision was made for our own culture. And for over a century, our students have been brought up in utter ignorance of worth of their own civilization of the past. Thus, we did not only lose the touch of the great which lay hidden in our own inheritance, but also the great honor of giving what we have, not merely begging from others, not merely borrowing culture and living like eternal schoolboys. But the time has come when we must not waste such our opportunities. We must try to do our best to bring out what we have, not go from century to century, from land to land, and display our poverty before others. We know that we have to be proud of what we have inherited from our ancestors, and such opportunity of giving not to be lost, not only for the sake of our country, but for the sake of humanity. Education is really a process. It's a process of preparing unprepared minds. Early stages of education should focus on building character of a learner. In the middle stages, education should prepare minds for emergence of a persona. Competence is a subset of persona development. Life teaches a human being to combine the strengths of character and competence. Education as a process is initiated at home, continued in educational systems like schools, colleges, universities, and so on, and carried on throughout life. Learning from experience is a serious component. Sometimes education seems never-ending process. We should reveal to oneself the levels of internal perfection of one's own creation. A well-educated society, therefore, should behave with a sense of internal perfection and establish a state of equilibrium with its own surroundings. Education systems of India, built on the modes of Gurukul, was focused on building a persona to the learners. Unfortunately, such a process could not be scaled up, and neither was the process inclusive. To some extent, it could be said that elitism in educational models may have contributed to some negative consequences in the form of social divides. Access to education should be available to all interested people. Systems of imparting education have changed world over. With millions of young people needing to be educated, scaling of the educational systems is necessary. Currently, more than 280 million Indians are undergoing tertiary education in our institutions. About 3 to 4 million Indians will be joining the tertiary education systems in the country annually very soon. Institutional mechanisms are necessary for meeting the educational aspirations of the society. While we build systems for imparting education, we must remember learning takes place within the mind of an individual, and what is internalized through learning alone is real education. In the current global context, education is becoming a product exchange for money and invested upon in expectations of physical incomes in later part of life. When there's a direct connection between education and money transacted, material returns from education derive greater attention than the scholarship on human values which the education is expected to impart. With the rise of economic well-being of people in this country, value of education as a product seems to be increasing manifold. Education under the global context is becoming a business type activity. Relationships between institutions and learners, or for that matter, even between educators and the educated, are turning into one of seller and buyer. Consumer orientation to education is an emerging reality. Education has come to be driven by market forces. The current trend is understandable, but it is not without its possible consequences on the society. I am mightily pleased that CHARUSAT University is working on the grammar founded by Gurudev Tagore in Shantiniketan and making this education as a value-based system. While economic inequities are in some sense a precondition for growth, wide disparities could lead to social catastrophes. In some sense, angst in various parts of the human society today could be traced to wide economic disparities and developmental divides. The other day, I happened to listen to an address delivered by Bharat Ratna C. Subramaniam when he was alive. He compares economic divides to differences in atmospheric pressures. When the pressure gradient is small, breeze sets in, leading to pleasantness. When the pressure differences are huge, cyclonic storm sets in, leading to devastations. When it is strongly coupled to economic forces and access to wealth, it should be ensured that education does not contribute to another form of social divide, namely economic divide among people. A holistic education should ensure that it serves to unite rather than divide people. CHARUSAT University accords high significance to the social upliftment through education as a process. Let me congratulate the university. While the profile of education as an economic product is an emerging reality in other parts of the world, ancient civilizations like India, Chinese, Egyptian, Roman, Greek, etc., could not afford to overlook or ignore the cultural dimensions of the joy of giving. I said Nalanda means joy of giving. It's an important dimension in human happiness. Product-oriented and market-driven educational systems seem to teach people to compete for gains from the society or create a self-absorbed mindset of me, for me, and to me. Modern educational systems seem to focus on improvement in standard of living. If the quality of living were to be considered, happiness quotient gains high significance. Education should contribute to psychic delight. It is strongly coupled to the cultural dimensions of education. Demand-driven education in the modern world is focusing on its role as an enabling of physical well-being. There are also other dimensions to education. It should add to psychic delight. It should enable the learned mind to establish harmony with the culture as well as nature. It should elevate one's thought processes and contribute to spiritual awakening. When education was pursued as a process of human civilization, learning was aimed at all four dimensions, namely the physical well-being, psychic delight, cultural harmony, and spiritual elevation of thought. Education should imbibe the values of fine art, poetry, literature, and several other aspects relating to human happiness. A learned mind should always be aware of the surroundings and contribute to the flow of positive energies into the system. In the world of super specialization, cultural dimensions of education seem to be ignored sometimes. The renaissance of cultural dimensions of education is an evolutionary need of humans. Renaissance, by definition, is a situation or a period of renewed interest and revival of classical style in something by way of general social movement. It is not just an action from the top rulers and government, but as a result of people's actions and behavioral responses. Education is indeed the most powerful instrument for influencing social behavior of people. It has an overarching impact on the way people behave within and with others. A badly designed professional system, other than teaching, might impact mostly the local systems and in that sense of immediate time. A badly designed educational system could affect the generations to come. Indian economy is bound to surge forward. In this rise of economic well-being, when the mundane challenges of basic needs are met, the human minds would psychic experience of taller order. The other socio-economic divide activities could fill up some physical needs and emotional assuages, but it is a harmony of culture alone that could lead to shared happiness among citizens. Education bears a large role in renaissance of cultures. Education plays a defining role in certain cultures of societies. Indian civilization represents a composite culture. Over the 2000 years of history, people from different regions and ethnicities migrated to this country. Shri, unlike the modern United States of America, is also the country of immigrants. Diversity of learner skills is a challenge for any educational system. India of the past had learned to deal with the diversity rather than to standardize and homogenize the society by way of adjusting the educational systems. Education is a cultural process. In matters relating to education, goodness of decisions is even more important than the speed, because culture changes slowly and retains a shared value society over long periods of time. Education is a critical element of social cultures which accord importance to shared values. Gurudev Tagore was anguishing in his noble address about the danger of Indians borrowing educational processes that did not meet her cultural setting. I dare not speak as to how he would have felt in the present day India, where education is a commodity created through exchange for money. In order that it contributes to human happiness, education should aim at spiritual elevation of human thought. It should discourage materialistic aggression. Education as a process should make the learning happen within the mind. Learning cannot be forced or even impacted from outside, no matter how great a teacher and institutions might be. For people to learn, they need to internalize experiences from the external world and create an internal methodology for not just retaining what they have learned, but also add values to their own lessons. Education should inspire people to emerge as good fellow human beings and well-meaning citizens of the world. The main aim of education should be one of inspiration of the mind. I am very happy to see that the motto of this university is inspirational excellence. And I would like to describe what I consider as inspiration. Inspiration is an elevated state of mind. When thoughts are elevated, mind is able to receive positive signals and energies from within. When the mind is inspired, it expresses a rare level of beauty and excellence. It extracts extraordinary values for the human effort and genius. An inspired mind is uninhibited and knows no limitations or constraints. It reaches a stage where the painful realities of mundane and dreary human habits vanish. In some sense, it's a stage of trance. Creativity prevails over everything moving and stationary when the mind is truly inspired. The question ahead is how to design educational systems that lead to inspired minds among the learners. In 1830, India enjoyed more than 25% of the global economic product. The social behavior of Indians of that time was worthy of emulation by others. By 2030, India might well emerge as a major economic power once again. India missed the Industrial Revolution, which has focused on intensive production and non-sustainable consumption. There are people who languish that India missed the Industrial Revolution and stayed with the evolutionary changes in social systems. Perhaps our cultural moorings are more suited to evolutionary rather than revolutionary changes in our systems. It appears that our economy might maintain high rates of growth over long periods of time. The question is whether the ascendancy of India in the economic power equations of the world would also contribute to the human happiness or global good or not. It is necessary that the ascendancy of Indian economy is associated also with the renaissance of our cultural moorings of sustainable consumption. Gandhiji once remarked, United Kingdom had to colonize the world to sustain the standard of living. Imagine how many years India would require to maintain similar standards of living. India in a Renaissance would remember and reflect on the civilizational legacies of sustainable consumption. Education should help the carving out of a country from an ancient civilization which enjoyed a rare level of spiritual elevation of thought as a whole society, but on the grains of contentment. Ladies and gentlemen, I am fully conscious of the fact that today year marks a new beginning of our life for several of you. You're looking forward to a new way of living, enabled probably by suitable physical income. I wish you all well. You might wonder as to why I spoke of cherished cultural values of the past when you are preparing for the future. It is by design and not by default. Resource-rich state of mind is known to cause a state of complacency in human history. Civilizations fell only on account of this tendency.